Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we will be analysing the important news appearing in the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 3rd October 2019. The topics to be discussed today are reflected on your screen and the timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So let's begin. Now this news we have taken from page number 10 and the title is A Sound Review. Now basically in this editorial the author is saying that the recent decision of the Supreme Court to review its earlier judgment of March 2018, where it had diluted certain provisions of the Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989, has been recalled. Now this discussion of ours will become relevant from the perspective of GS Paper 2 under the category of mechanisms, laws, institutions and bodies constituted for the protection and betterment of the vulnerable sections. So basically in our discussion today, we will be talking about what were the provisions which were earlier diluted by the Supreme Court and on what reasons or on what ground has the Supreme Court now reinstated them and what message does this judgment sends out. Now let us see what all provisions were diluted by the Supreme Court in its March 2018 judgment. The first provision was with respect to the anticipatory bail. Now, the SC/ST Act under its section 18 has stated that anticipatory bail, which is provided for under Article 438 of the CRPC, will not be available to any person who is accused under this Act, which basically means that this Act does not allow for anticipatory bail. However, the Supreme Court in 2018 removed this bar which was placed on anticipatory bail under section 18 of the Act and allowed the courts to grant advance bail to any accused person. However, on Tuesday, the Supreme Court, while reviewing its judgment, stated that this section 18, which puts a bar on anticipatory bail, was enacted so that a sense of deterrence can be instilled amongst the people. That is to say, this provision will create some kind of fear or deterrence in the people so that they do not harass or discriminate against the ST/SC people. Furthermore, the court also stated that denial of anticipatory bail is not violative of Article 21, which speaks about life and personal liberty. The reason for this is that anticipatory bail is basically a statutory right and not a fundamental right which has been provided for under Article 21. Because anticipatory bail stems from Section 438 of CRPC and not from Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. The second provision was related to the preliminary inquiry. Now, Section 4 of the ST/SC Act casts a duty on every public servant to record FIR as per the information provided. Hence, under Article 4, a public servant has also been given the duty as well as the power to record an FIR. However, the Supreme Court last year in 2018 diluted this provision and stated that there should be a preliminary inquiry into all the complaints which have been lodged under this Act before arresting an individual or even before registering an FIR. And while diluting the provision, Justice Goyal had observed that liberty of one person cannot be sacrificed to protect another person's liberty, and hence added that this Act cannot be converted into a charter for exploitation or oppression by unscrupulous persons or by police for extraneous reasons. Therefore, he ordered that neither is an FIR to be immediately registered nor are arrests to be made without a preliminary inquiry by an SSP. However, in the review judgment, Justice Mishra has said that the public servants already have a remedy for false cases under Section 482 of the CRPC, and furthermore, they can get FIR squashed even by the High Courts. Furthermore, Section 22 of the Act also protects the public servants for actions taken in good faith for which no legal proceedings can be initiated against them. So basically, the court has stated that since already certain remedies are available for public servants under Section 482 of the CRPC as well as under Section 22 of the said Act, hence a preliminary inquiry into all the complaints before arrest and registering FIR is not required. And therefore, public servants should abide by the duty which have been cast upon them under Section 4, whereby they can record an FIR as and when information or a complaint is being made to them. And the third dilution was with respect of wanting prior approvals before arrest. Now, the Supreme Court in 2018 said that even if a preliminary inquiry is held and a case is registered, arrest is not necessary, and that an arrest can be made only with the approval of the appointing authority as far as the public servants are concerned. That is to say, no public servant is to be arrested without written permission of the appointing authority. Furthermore, the court extended this benefit to other citizens as well and stated that they cannot be arrested without the written permission of the SSP. However, on Tuesday, Justice Mishra overruled this and said that the decision of arrest is taken by the investigating authority and not by the appointing authority. Hence, it is beyond the jurisdiction of an appointing authority to decide or approve an arrest, and the decision of arrest can only be made by the investigating authority. Lastly, there were certain other observations which were made as well. Now, firstly, Justice Mishra, while accepting the review of the said judgment, relied on the statement of objects and reasons of the actual act, which stated that despite various measures to improve the socio-economic conditions of the ST/SCs, they remain vulnerable. Therefore, this decision of the Supreme Court to recall its earlier judgment underscores the fact that the special laws which are made for the vulnerable communities, for example the ST/SCs in this case, is actually based on the ground realities, because the ST/SCs even today face discrimination and ostracization at the hands of higher castes. Furthermore, their situation is so poor that majority of the time the STs and the SCs are unable to gather the courage to actually lodge a complaint in the first place. Secondly, in the review judgment, the Supreme Court has actually lashed out on the assumption made by the court earlier in 2018 that the members of the STs and the SCs actually give false complaint. Hence, the court has stated that this assumption that the ST/SC members are more likely to give false complaints as compared to the general population is actually very appalling. Hence, in a way, the court felt that all these additional safeguards which were placed by the Supreme Court last year are in turn another form of discrimination against the members of the ST/SC communities. Because here again, the court is making an assumption that the ST/SCs give false complaint. Hence, in a way, they are again discriminating the ST/SCs, maybe more so on moral grounds. Secondly, it was observed that all these directions related to the requirement of preliminary inquiry as well as approval before arrest were all extra statutory in nature, because these directions or provisions were not provided in the actual act, and these were actually given by the Supreme Court. Hence, through this direction, the judiciary of our country indulged in lawmaking which is beyond its mandate. Furthermore, Justice Mishra also quoted Subramanian Swamy case of 2014, in which the court had held that where the statutory provisions are ambiguous, the court cannot read them down altogether, which basically means that if in a law certain statutory provisions are ambiguous or unclear, that does not warrant court the power to read them down or strike them down altogether. Furthermore, it is observed that the Supreme Court can lay down guidelines only in those cases where there is certain legislative gaps or legislative lacunas. The most prominent example of this is the Vishakha guidelines. Now, the Supreme Court laid down the Vishakha guidelines because there was no law in place for protecting women from sexual harassment at workplace. Hence, due to this legislative gap, the Supreme Court came and filled the shoes of the Parliament and laid down certain guidelines. However, what is to be noted, that in all those cases where a legislation or a law already exists, then in that case the Supreme Court cannot give any directions which are contrary to the existing law, which the Supreme Court actually did in the March 2018 judgment. Therefore, this review judgment held that through its earlier March 2018 judgment, the Supreme Court had encroached on the Parliament's field and mandate, which is lawmaking, and this goes against the principle of separation of power. Because as per the principle of separation of power, it is the mandate or the duty only of the Parliament to make laws and not of the Supreme Court. The duty of the Supreme Court is to examine the constitutional validity of a law and adjudicate various laws, and not to replace or supplant the laws which are already existing. Hence, the author has stated that this review is a timely reminder that the Supreme Court power to pass any order cannot be used to give directions contrary to the existing laws. So this was all about this article. Let's move on to our next news. This news has been taken from page number 1 and it reads, Prime Minister Modi declares country open defecation free. Now, on the sidelines of 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi declared India as open defecation free. Now, this discussion of ours will become relevant from the perspective of GS Paper 2 under the category of social issue, especially those related to health and sanitation. Now, as far as the definition of ODF is concerned, a village, town, district or a state is declared open defecation free if, firstly, all the households in the said area have at least one toilet, and secondly, if there are no visible human feces in the environment. Hence, if these two conditions are met, a said area is declared to be ODF. Hence, in other words, ODF is basically the termination of fecal-oral transmission, which eliminates the contamination of groundwater, surface water, soil, etc. Now, what is to be noted here is that one of the main objectives of the Swachh Bharat mission was to make India open defecation free by 2019. Moreover, ending open defecation is also a sustainable development goal under Target 6.2. Let us know a few more details about the Swachh Bharat mission. Now, the Swachh Bharat mission was launched on 2nd October 2014 to accelerate India's effort to achieve universal sanitation coverage. Now, the strategy employed by the Swachh Bharat mission was construction of both individual as well as community toilets. And in the toilet construction, twin pit technology was preferred. Now, the Swachh Bharat mission has two submissions, namely Swachh Bharat Mission Grameen, which covers the rural area, and the Swachh Bharat Mission Urban, which covers the urban area. Now, under the Swachh Bharat Mission Grameen, almost 110 million toilets have been constructed, and the open defecation free status of villages in India have improved from 34% when they started in 2014 to 100% now in the year 2019. Under the Swachh Bharat Mission Urban, 6 million individual as well as 5 lakh community toilets have been constructed. Moreover, SBMU has also achieved considerable progress in door-to-door collection of waste, establishment of waste to energy as well as waste to compost plants. So this was all about this news. Let's move on to our next article. This news appears on page number 10 and is titled Reigning Misery. And in this article, the author is stating that we need better infrastructure for water management if we want to deal with the droughts and flood cycle. Now, this discussion of ours will become relevant from the perspective of GS Paper 1 under the category of urbanization. Now, the context of this article is the recent incessant floods in Bihar, which have caused significant loss of life and property. Now, the current scientific view on the effects of climate change is that over a period of time, the normal patterns related to rainfall will become less and less common. Moreover, there will be an increase in frequency of floods and drought, especially in the urban areas. Furthermore, as per the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change's report on cities and climate change, it has stated that flooding, drought, and heat islands are the key dangers for cities as well as urban areas. Therefore, in this background, the author in this article is calling for a far-sighted national response to tackle the dangers of floods. Now, in this article, the author is stating 2-3 points as to what the government should do to better tackle the floods and drought situation. The first and foremost is that the need of the hour is an interministerial response wherein the Union Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change should coordinate efforts with other ministries which are in charge of housing, urban and rural development, water management, agriculture and etc., as well as even with the state governments to come up with a robust plan to tackle situations of flood. Secondly, the author is stating that today, Indian cities are attracting heavy investments. However, in these cities, the state and the municipal administration is not able to provide adequate amount of capacity building or the infrastructure development which is required to complement this heavy investment. Therefore, the state or the municipal administration should focus on improving the capacity building as well as developing more efficient infrastructure. Thirdly, the author is saying that it's high time that the focus of the governance should shift on efficient urban planning and adaptation because, as we already know, various reports and statistics have suggested that there is going to be rampant climate change wherein the normal patterns will become less common and the prediction of floods and drought is going to become difficult. Hence, the need of the hour is to have a proper urban planning as well as other devices in place which can help to better adapt to such climate change. Now, some of these adaptations can include, firstly, to create green infrastructure. Now, green infrastructure basically is an approach to water management that protects, restores, or mimics the natural water cycle. Therefore, green infrastructure basically means planting trees and restoring wetlands rather than building a costly new water treatment plant. Secondly, the cities should establish flood handling structures through various financial and technical linkages. That means that the government should allocate enough funds as well as should use the latest technology to create such infrastructure which is capable of handling and resisting floods. Next, the author is suggesting that we need to find solutions which use both engineering as well as ecology to contain excess water from the rainfall and put that water to better and judicious use. Therefore, both engineering as well as environment and ecology have to go hand in hand, because whatever solution we find today have to be a mix of both, because none of them separately, that is whether it is just technical engineering or just environment, cannot handle this. Hence, we need to combine both and find such new solutions. A few examples of such solutions would be to create new lakes and biowhales. Now, biowhales are basically vegetative channels which are used to manage rainwater. So basically, biowhales are channels which concentrates and convey rainwater runoff while removing debris and pollution. Hence, biowhales can be important in recharging groundwater, and they basically consist of a drainage course with gently sloped sides. Therefore, creating lake and biowhales is an example where we can use both engineering and ecology to find solutions to contain the excess water. Last but not the least, the author is stating that the government should also coordinate with Nepal to track monsoon flows, because most of the big Gangetic rivers actually originate in the Himalayan region. So these were certain suggestions mentioned by the author. Let's move on to our next news. This news appears on page number 11 and is titled "Miles to Go Before Becoming Open Defecation Free." Now, this discussion of ours will become relevant from the perspective of GS Paper 2 under the category of Health and Sanitation. Now, as you must be knowing, on the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has declared India open defecation free. However, in this article, the authors are critical of this declaration. Now, the authors conducted a study 10 months ago wherein they had examined the countrywide ODF status declaration by the Prime Minister. And after the studies, the authors are rather critical of this declaration of the 100% ODF status, both in terms of the reliability of the data as well as the modus operandi for achieving such status. Hence, in this regard, let us talk about the two criticisms forward by the authors with regard to the 100% ODF free status of India. Now, as far as the reliability of data is concerned, the authors conducted the study earlier this year in certain parts of Bihar, UP, Madhya Pradesh as well as Rajasthan, and therein they observed that though there has been an increase in the ownership of toilets between 2014 and 2018, however, such increase has only been of 34%. Hence, in this regard, the author is stating that this low percentage of 34% is far from the 100% claim which Prime Minister Modi has made in regards to declaring India ODF. Furthermore, the author states that the number of people who have stopped defecating openly has only declined by 26%. And currently, as per the authors, more than 40% of people in these four states where the survey was done still defecate in the open. And what is rather strange, that out of this 40% who defecate in the open, about quarter or 25% of them actually have toilets. Now, this observation by the authors point to another fact relating to ODF in India, that is related to behavior change. Hence, the mere fact that a person owns toilet is no guarantee that people from that households will be using that toilet and not defecating in the open. Because as stated, 25% of these 40% people actually have a toilet, yet they choose to defecate in the open out of compulsions of behavior. The second reservation is with respect to the modus operandi through which this status has been achieved. Now, the author says that the Swachh Bharat Mission's website declares that the government has built over 100 million toilets during the past 5 years, that is from 2014-19. If we do certain mathematical calculations, then that would mean that 38 toilets were built every minute in India. Now, the author argues that these figures have been achieved on the basis of coercion or forcefully. Now, the survey of government officials revealed that people were actually threatened that they will be denied benefits under certain right-based schemes like the PDS, Kisan credit cards, etc. Hence, it was through this coercion and threat that people were forced to build toilet. Moreover, the survey also found that 1 in every 4 family actually faced withdrawal of government benefits for not having a latrine. Therefore, both these instances point to the fact that these numbers were achieved by the government officials through coercion or use of threat. Furthermore, the authors observed that the maximum coercion was faced by Dalits and Adivasis. Furthermore, it was not just the government officials who were provided with unrealistic targets. Even the contractors were given very unrealistic construction targets with the threat of being fired. Therefore, on the basis of these observations, the authors are really skeptical with regards to the quality and the numbers of toilets which have been actually built in country. And lastly, in conclusion, the author has stated that the need of the hour today is to frame an overarching national sanitation policy, keeping in mind Gandhian ideals of ahimsa and compassion. That is, we should not use coercion and threat to force people into constructing toilet and using those toilets. Using toilets and becoming open defecation free is a personal choice, and this choice can stem only freely when people themselves would want to adopt this habit, and coercion and force will not go a long way. So this was all about this article. So this article in a way was trying to present the reality behind this number of 100% open defecation free. And the points related to coercion and unrealistic targets can be used if a question on success of Swachh Bharat mission and achieving the status of 100% ODF is asked in the mains examination. So with this, let's move on to our next news. This article appears on page number 10 and is titled Furthering This Neighborhood Friendship. Now this article has been written in the background that Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is on a first official visit to India from 3rd to 6th October, post the general elections in Bangladesh which were held in December 2018. Hence, in this regard today, we will be looking at the bilateral cooperation between India and Bangladesh, as well as what are the current issues plaguing the relationship. And this discussion of ours will become relevant from the perspective of GS Paper 2 under the category of international relation, especially the bilateral relations of India. Let us first talk about the areas of bilateral cooperation. Now, the strong foundation of India-Bangladesh relationship is also evident from the settlement of their boundary dispute. Now, in the year 2015, both India and Bangladesh signed the Land Boundary Agreement, which resolved the long-standing issue related to the enclaves related in both the countries. As per this agreement, India gave 111 enclaves to Bangladesh and in turn received 51 from it. Furthermore, in the recent time, Bangladesh has also addressed the issue related to security threats and the acts of insurgencies against India. Therefore, the India-Bangladesh border is now one of India's most secure border. The second area is with respect to defense cooperation. Now, in the year 2017, India and Bangladesh signed 2 defense pacts. Moreover, in 2018, India also extended $500 million line of credit to Bangladesh to buy armaments. In addition to this, currently 2 MOUs have been signed between the naval forces of India and Bangladesh. The third aspect is related to trade relations. Now, in the financial year 2017-18, the trade between India and Bangladesh stood over $9 billion. Additionally, it is felt that if India removes certain kind of non-tariff barriers, the exports of Bangladesh to India is likely to increase. The fourth area is with respect to power cooperation. Now, in 2018, India exported almost 160 megawatt of electricity to Bangladesh. Furthermore, India is currently developing a 1600 megawatt power station with dedicated transmission which will transmit power to Bangladesh, thereby increasing the power trade between the two countries. Moreover, India in collaboration with Russia is also developing Bangladesh's first nuclear power plant in Rupur. The fifth area is related to connectivity cooperation. Now, in the recent time, land routes have become more popular as compared to air travel and is preferred by over 85% of Bangladeshis who visit India. Currently, 2 train services are in operation from Dhaka, Kolkata and from Kolkata to Kulna, whereas a third train service from Agartala to Akrao is under construction. Additionally, in the year 2018, India started additional 5 bus services to Bangladesh. And in March 2019, that is this year, the first ever Dhaka-Kolkata cruise ship was also launched. Last but not the least is related to the tourism ties. Now in the year 2018, Bangladeshi tourists accounted for 21.6% of the total tourists visiting India. Moreover, Bangladesh contributes to almost 50% of India's health or medical tourism, thereby bringing a lot of revenue to India. Lastly, let us see what are the current issues and irritants in the India-Bangladesh relationship. The first is related to the Teesta water sharing. Now, West Bengal government has refused to endorse the terms which were agreed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2015 with respect to sharing of water of the Teesta river. And this refusal by West Bengal has now created a situation of an impasse, thereby affecting almost 1 lakh hectares of land in Bangladesh. The second issue is with respect to the National Register of Citizens. Now, as you must be knowing, almost 19 lakh Assamese people have been excluded from the NRC and have been labelled as illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. However, Bangladesh, on the other hand, has stated that no migrants have travelled to Assam illegally during the 1971 War of Independence, and has also stated that this controversial NRC is risking the Indo-Bangladesh relation. The third issue is with respect to the Rohingya crisis. Now, already Bangladesh is facing the challenge that it has to provide shelter to more than 1 million Rohingya refugees who are fleeing persecution from Myanmar. Therefore, Bangladesh is upset over India's stand on the Rohingya issue, as India has refused to give refuge to the Rohingyas. The fourth issue is related with the border killings. Now, although the border killings have decreased at the Indo-Bangladesh border, however, these border killings still remain an unpleasant issue. Though India's border security forces claim that most of the firing at the border is in self-defense in tackling the cattle trafficking, however, this claim is not credible considering the fact that ever since India has banned cattle export, cattle trade has drastically fallen along the border. Hence, we can say that these border killings still remain a major issue of human rights violation and affect harmony between the bilateral relations of India and Bangladesh. The fifth issue is related to delay in aid commitments. Now, since 2010, India has approved almost $7.36 billion line of credit for Bangladesh. However, till December 2018, India has only transferred $442 million to Bangladesh. One of the major reasons for this is the bureaucratic red tapeism. So these were the major issues. As a way forward, the author states that in a current situation where India's neighborhood is maligned with distrust and cynicism, the relationship between India and Bangladesh, which is built on friendship and hope, gives some kind of optimism. Moreover, the shared colonial legacy, history, as well as the socio-cultural bonds between the two countries are the strong foundation on which the relation is based. And now the need of the hour is that this strong foundation has to be injected with certain kind of momentum by the leadership on both the ends, by addressing the major issues and irritants and expanding further cooperation between the two countries. So this was all about it. Let's move on to our next news. Now this news appears on page number 6 and is titled Cement Firm to Use Plastic Waste for Fuel in Meghalaya. Now recently the Meghalaya government has signed an agreement with a major cement firm making for buying plastic waste to be used as fuel instead of coal to produce clinkers. Now Meghalaya has over a dozen of cement producing firms because Meghalaya has almost 10% of India's limestone reserves. Now all these cement companies in Meghalaya up till now rely largely on coal, which too is mined in Meghalaya. However, now a major cement firm has agreed to buy plastic waste which it will use to produce fuel instead of coal. Now this cement firm, which has offered to do so, had its factory retrofitted to consume plastics in place of coal. Furthermore, the State Pollution Control Board of Meghalaya will be monitoring the ambient air quality after the plastic is burned to be used as a fuel so that no harmful emission take place. Now this decision by the Meghalaya government is not a first in its fight against plastic ban. Meghalaya had started battling plastic in the year 2018 by building the first plastic road in the Nongstoin town, followed by another in the Tura town this year, that is in 2019. Now please remember here that this decision by Meghalaya government to use plastic to build road has also been provided for under the plastic waste management rules. Furthermore, a few months ago, the government also introduced the Meghalaya Plastic Challenge, wherein it wanted to involve local organization and other traditional tribal bodies in its effort in plastic waste management. Now, this decision by Meghalaya can be used as a point if any question on plastic waste management is asked, and this discussion is relevant from the perspective of GS Paper 3 under the category of Environment, as well as from the perspective of GS Paper 1 under the category of Urbanization and Waste Management. So with this, let's move on to our practice questions. Now, based on our today's discussion, here is your prelims practice question. Please pause the video and solve them. We'll discuss the answer after 5 seconds. The first question read, India is developing Bangladesh's first nuclear power plant in Rupur in collaboration with which country? The right answer is A, Russia. Question number 2 reads, consider the following statements with respect to Meghalaya. Number 1, it has 10% of India's limestone reserves. This is correct. Second, it recently signed an agreement with cement firm to buy plastic to be used as fuel in cement production. Now this is also correct. Hence the right answer becomes C, both 1 and 2. Question number 3 is with respect to the ST-SC Prevention of Atrocities Act. First statement, it has put a ban on anticipatory bail for people accused under the Act. Now this is correct and has been provided for under Section 18 of the Act. Second, it gives a public servant right to register an FIR. This is also correct and has been provided for under Section 22 of the Act. Hence the right answer becomes C, both 1 and 2. Question number 4 reads, consider the following statements with respect to Grey Indian Hornbill. Now in today's Hindu newspaper on page number 16, an article in relation to the Indian grey hornbill has been provided. The first statement, its IUCN status is least concern. This is correct. Second, it is found only in the Indian subcontinent. This is also right. Hence the right answer to this also becomes C, both 1 and 2. With this we come to an end for today's discussion. Let's move to the question for the day.